The two candidates for Maryland governor debate.
We wouldn't defund the police.
I'm excited to work in partnership with the new state's attorney.
Fox 45 News takes you into the debate and presses both on how they've used the governor's office to help get Baltimore's crime crisis under control. Raising crimes caught on camera.
Help us figure out who these people are before they strike again.
The renewed push for witnesses to come forward and violent consequences of silence. A city police officer is under the federal microscope. What Project Baltimore is uncovering about the man described as a unicorn.
Next severe weather threat moving in for Thursday. I'll let you know when the worst of the weather could impact your commute.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Our top story tonight, Baltimore's crime crisis and the relentless effort to hold elected leaders accountable on promises. Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Baltimore is on track to see the 8th straight year where 300-plus people have been killed. This morning, a 26-year-old man was shot and killed in southeast Baltimore. He is now one of 262 people killed this year. Twice that number of people have been shot but survived.
Changes in leadership are on the horizon. Ivan Bates is on the way to becoming the city's next top prosecutor. After 8 years of leadership under Marilyn Mosby and her policies, Bates is vowing to crack down on criminals.
Our state is also getting a new governor. In less than 4 weeks, voters will decide between Democrat Wes Moore and Republican Dan Cox. And tonight, the two took part in their first and likely only debate.
It's important that we get the guns off the streets that are there illegally and being used illegally for crimes. Mr. Moore and his team, they actually supported decriminalizing much of this and refused. The approach is, their approach was to refuse the felony approach that if you've used a gun in crime, that you should go to jail. Instead, they want them to run the streets. That's why we have 60% of the murders in Baltimore City right now being unsolved and unprosecuted. That's going to change on my watch. We're going to bring back law and order.
People need to feel safe in their own communities, in their own homes, and in their own skin. And I think about what my opponent said that I said, which, by the way, I never said, once again. There's also an important role that the state plays in making sure that we have a strong parole and probation system. When you consider a third of all violent offenders are in violation of parole and probation, that is a state function, and right now it is understaffed and undermanned. We have to fix that. That we can actually put state resources to be able to make sure we're providing supports for violence intervention programs and violence interruption programs, which are continuing to show impacts because the people who are closest to the challenge are oftentimes the ones closest to the solutions.
Well, team coverage of a city in crisis and Vote 2022.
Let's begin with Mackenzie Frost in the race for governor.
Outside the debate,
yes to West!
supporters showing up for their candidate.
I believe in democracy, and West believes in democracy.
Democrat, liberal, it's a great idea, but Dan Cox is for freedom.
Inside, Republican Dan Cox and Democrat Wes Moore taking aim at each other. Moore calling Cox dangerous to Maryland, bringing up Cox's 2020 election denials. Cox calling into question Moore's Baltimore history and Moore's stance on law enforcement. Moore hammering home his support for abortion access, while Cox says he is pro-choice, but the issue, he says, is settled in Maryland by law. Both candidates agree public safety is critical. And after the debate,
how would you use your position in Annapolis to sway those policies?
Well, number one, we wouldn't defund the police, which is what my opponent has sought to do.
How do you feel about the union supporting your opponent?
It's just politics. It's okay, because the officers support me and the sheriff support me, so we're good.
If elected, would you back another bill similar to what the governor had introduced several times to increase the penalties for repeat violent offenders?
I would.
How would you use your position as governor to impact and improve public safety in places like Baltimore City, Prince George's County, other places where we're seeing crime on the rise?
Yeah, we'd make sure that we're working in partnership with our local jurisdictions.
What does that look like?
Well, so what it looks like, so for example, you take Baltimore. I'm excited to work in partnership with the new state's attorney that's coming on board to be able to making sure that we're getting and keeping violent offenders off of our streets.
Trying to get him to answer if he would back a plan to increase mandatory minimums for some of Maryland's most violent offenders.
Would you support tougher penalties? Would you support tougher penalties for repeat violent offenders? Would you support tougher penalties for repeat violent offenders?
But Moore not answering. Before anyone takes office, voters must cast their ballot. And while Moore says he's confident in the system,
I trust Maryland's electoral system.
Cox will not say if he will accept the results.
Ballots are being counted before election day. Yes or no, will you accept the results given this happening right now?
Well, I think we need to wait and see, how things play out legally. Well, we're going to follow the Constitution.
With less than 4 weeks to go, more leads in the polls and in terms of campaign cash. And now it's the final push to reach voters who have yet to make up their minds. Governor Larry Hogan has said he will not be supporting Republican Dan Cox in November, but that is not stopping Cox from praising Governor Hogan. I asked the delegate after the debate if this was an attempt for him to try and reach more moderate voters heading into the general election season. He says that's not really the case. Rather, he has supported most of what the governor has done during his tenure. In Owings Mills, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Well, that brings us to our question of the day. Which candidate do you trust most to get a handle on Baltimore's crime crisis? Dan Cox or Wes Moore? Now, we just opened the poll, and so far, 100% say Dan Cox. Go to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
Well, this year we've seen criminals in Baltimore become more brazen, from mass shootings ripping through neighborhoods to a pregnant woman ambushed to officers attacked in the line of duty. Tonight, we're looking into the nature of these crimes and the struggle to arrest those behind them, even those caught on camera. Keith Daniels has our full story.
Well, police have said many times how communities step up to help catch those bad guys with guns. But there are times, they say, when that call for help seems to go unanswered, even when the suspects are caught on camera.
53401.
Across Baltimore City, images of gun violence caught on camera. The trigger pullers out to kill.
Our young suspects, our suspects in general, they don't care who's around.
Detectives at the Baltimore Police Department need your help.
Police releasing video this week, a suspect in the daytime shooting of a man at a corner store on East Baltimore Street at South Highland Avenue. Look here. The suspect seen clearly wearing a red shirt, then seen on video running into the business, opening fire on the victim, who survived. The shooting happened last month, September 6th. The suspect still on the loose, like many others, caught on camera.
They remain on the loose because we're not turning in our friends, our sons, our nephews, our schoolmates, our students. We know who these are.
Their identities possibly known. Still, they remain free, including those responsible for the mass shooting that happened in Park Heights in August. All of it caught on camera in daylight. The suspects pulled to the corner of Park Heights and Shirley Avenues, jumped out of a silver Lexus, and opened fire on a group of men playing table games, killing one man and wounding 6 others. So far, no arrest.
They're just committing these violent crimes without regard, and the responsibility falls on all of us, the police department, the community. We're all one in this, and we all are suffering because of it.
So why do people who know something say nothing? The pervasive so-called stop snitching culture in Baltimore City, oftentimes the blame. As Shakir Muhammad reasons.
It's not that we don't care, but, it's best that you just mind your business, man, because you can dig yourself a grave, man, and put yourself in a situation. I mean, that's something different. And what do you mean different? Step up there? Honestly, no, I wouldn't, especially if it has nothing to do with me or mine. And even if it was dealing with me, to be honest, yeah, I wouldn't get the police involved.
Still, the plea from police.
Help us figure out who these people are before they strike again.
And they do strike again. We learned tonight that a suspect caught on camera shooting and killing a man last year in April got away. 4 months later, police say he was arrested for an unrelated attempted murder charge. And tonight, he's behind bars. Reporting tonight, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Panic across 3 area schools today because of police activity. In Carroll County, Winfield Elementary and South Carroll High School had to be placed on lockdown. That was because of nearby police activity. In Baltimore County, Chadwick Elementary was evacuated after a bomb threat. Police say all students are safe and they didn't find anything suspicious. In Anne Arundel County, police say a student stabbed another student at Glen Burnie High School this afternoon. It happened around 1:15. A school resource officer arrested the 17-year-old student with the knife. The victim suffered minor injuries. And new tonight, we're hearing of a Baltimore student who was robbed yesterday at Kipp Elementary. The student was only 13 years old. Riel Creighton spoke with the family and has full details.
Well, Baltimore City Schools police do confirm that they did respond to an incident at the school, but that is also part of what is fueling this family's anger. They say that it came a day too late. This was a child, a student whose life they claim was threatened, who was robbed right next to his school. And the day it happened, in response, they say they saw very little action.
He grabbed my arm and I said, "Get off me." And then he grabbed my book bag.
A 13-year-old boy describing his encounter in front of his school.
He tried to tell me to take my watch off, and I said no. And the boy came right there, and he said, "If you don't take that city off, you're going to die."
What are you thinking when you hear that?
I was going to die.
Traumatizing to watch. Marsha Powell, the boy's aunt.
If he didn't take that watch off, what could have happened?
Still emotional after she says she saw it all unfold. There for pickup, dismissal at Kipp Elementary and Middle, just in time, she says, to see her nephew robbed of his watch in broad daylight. Her 8-year-old son in tow, also shoved outside the school, she says, by 2 boys wearing ski masks.
I thank God that I was there, you know.
Fiance Larry Wallace also watching and sprang into action.
And I grabbed the young man. I said, "Hey, stop." Basically, I tackled him down.
Wallace says he chased the boys and retrieved the watch within minutes, all inside to inform the school.
No safety.
Tears turned outrage after a conversation with the principal.
He said, mentioned to me that it's nothing they can do because it didn't happen on school grounds. I said, I witnessed it. I watched it happen directly where this child is supposed to dismiss it.
Wednesday, this letter sent to parents saying a student was confronted by several youth across the street. It went on to say who attempted to take his belongings. They're working closely with school police to investigate.
Right here. It was basically right here.
The family showing us the proximity on the sidewalk right next to the field, insisting this was an on-campus robbery. Yet police never called, parents never warned, they say, until a day later after they demanded it from school officials.
You did nothing.
Meantime, but a 13-year-old who still can't shake what happened.
I don't want to come back to this school.
Why don't you want to come back?
Because I don't feel safe.
Now, we did also reach out to Baltimore City Schools tonight to see if the district has a response to this. Meantime, the family says because there was no description taken of the suspects yesterday when they say the robbery happened, they were afraid for parents and students today that those thieves could come back. Reporting in Baltimore, Riel Creighton, Fox 45 News.
Well, happening tomorrow, Baltimore County parents will be turning up the heat on school administrators to better protect their children. We've seen a number of violent incidents break out across the school system this year. Just last week, parents rallied to draw school officials' attention to the situation. Tomorrow, there's going to be a virtual town hall for students and parents to talk about safety. If you'd like to attend, we have a link at foxbaltimore.com/newslinks.
Get your umbrellas and rain jackets because we're about to get more rainy weather. Our Weather Authority team is tracking storms for tomorrow. Some of them could turn severe.
Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers here with the timing of the system that is approaching.
Yeah, general time frame we're looking at is somewhere between about 5 and 8 p.m. So right during the afternoon, evening commute. So that's not something we want to see. We've got a marginal or 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather. The big players here are going to be wind gusts, wind damage, potentially downpours, as well as maybe, especially the farther south you get, potentially getting an isolated spin-up tornado, especially the southern Chesapeake Bay area, Delmarva, and eastern portions of Virginia. But it's something that we will watch closely. Again, drop-off time in the morning for kids heading in. They're going to need umbrellas. Rain showers around 62, 67 at lunch. Showers, maybe a rumble, and some of those stronger storms approach at pickup time. We're going to time everything out on the future scan hour by hour coming up in just about 10 minutes.
All right, Jonathan, thanks. Make sure to keep the free WBFF weather app close tomorrow. If any storms turn severe, we will alert you right away. Just search for WBFF in your app store.
Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight. A Baltimore City Schools police officer racks up more overtime pay than his initial salary. Project Baltimore has more in the federal probe and why the police union calls him a unicorn. Gas prices jump, the gut punch to the president's attempts to drive prices down, and why you should be prepared for long-term pain at the pump, according to some experts. Still ahead on Fox 45, a blow to the family of Hayman Lee and their fight for justice as Adnan Syed is now free. The new developments and what comes next.
All right, welcome back.
A Baltimore City School police officer is on pace to rack up more than his annual salary in just overtime 3 years in a row.
And as Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, city schools approved that money, and sources say the FBI took notice.
This begs an investigation.
Adam Andrzejewski is the founder of OpenTheBooks.com, a government watchdog organization that tracks public spending. And he believes this could be a prime example of misused tax dollars.
Massive spikes in overtime certainly raise red flags.
So you do periodic hall walks?
Lawrence Smith is a Baltimore City School police officer and 7-time state champion head football coach for Dunbar High School. Sources say he's also currently under investigation by the FBI, in part over payroll irregularities. Through a public records request, Project Baltimore obtained this payroll database of Smith's overtime earnings. We can see his overtime hours per paycheck going back to 2019. And what we found is hard to believe. In 2020, Smith earned about $68,000 in overtime, more than his annual salary. We found one paycheck where he logged 116 and a half hours of overtime in 2 weeks. If you average it out, that would mean he worked nearly 8.5 hours of overtime every day for 2 weeks straight. We found between August and September of 2020, Smith recorded 300 hours of overtime over a 6-week period. If you add that to his normal work week, Smith says he was at work on average nearly 13 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 42 straight days, a feat he nearly repeated the following year in 2021, when he logged 297 hours of overtime over a 6-week period between June and July.
To the extent that Lawrence Smith's public employment is for the public good, he should be lauded. What you've outlined here is a troubling pattern.
2021 was a big year for Smith. He made more than any other city school police officer, $30,000 more than the city school's police chief. How did he do it? By bringing home more than $94,000 in overtime. His total earnings that year, nearly $168,000.
That's a tremendous amount for any employee in the Baltimore City Public Schools to be working, just in terms of gross hours.
But Smith didn't always used to work this much overtime. According to city schools, the average school police officer makes about $18,000 a year in overtime. But take a look at this chart. In 2017, 2018, and 2019, Smith earned below the average. But in 2020, his overtime began to skyrocket. So what happened?
What I'll say about Detective Smith is this. He is a unicorn in our police department.
Baltimore City Schools did not provide an explanation for the overtime, but Sergeant Clyde Boatwright, president of the FOP, is not surprised that it's a lot of hours.
He is one of one. He has a responsibility that no one else in our department has.
Boatwright says about 5 years ago, Smith took on more responsibility as a liaison to other police departments.
We got good movement.
He's also the custodian of the camera systems.
So if there's a homicide that occurs near a school, there could be footage where a suspect is seen getting away, a getaway car, a getaway driver, and he is the person that will be looking into those types of situations.
Let's get to the cafeteria.
According to Boatwright, Smith's role requires him to be on call 24 hours a day. And with Baltimore's crime rate, the overtime can add up. It also goes through an approval process with multiple supervisors signing off.
Do you believe there's enough oversight in the overtime system?
Yes, I do.
But when an employee is making far more than his annual salary in overtime, Andrzejewski questions whether it's the best use of public dollars.
Well, it's a misallocation of public resources. For that kind of money, the public could have had an extra resource officer or two.
He says, at the very least, an audit should be conducted.
Why is one person invested with all of this authority, all of this control, and all of this expertise within the Baltimore City Public Schools? Auditors need to take a look at this situation.
I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Project Baltimore reached out to Lawrence Smith for this story, but did not hear back. Well, no more snow days in Maryland. The school system's doing away with traditional snow days and what they're replacing them with.
And we are tracking the next weather maker as it moves in. As promised, take a look at the future scan hour by hour. The worst of the weather probably tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow morning, though, 6 a.m., you're already seeing some rain on and off moving in, getting the kids to school. I know that's going to be rough. And as we work our way through late morning and early afternoon, still some more scattered rain, and then the stronger storms as we head towards the p.m. commute. So the morning commute, even still, going to be harrowing with lots of wet conditions. I'm going to let you know if you may be able to squeak out an outdoor recess and how the 7-day forecast looks in a couple of minutes.
Making headlines around the nation tonight, conspiracy theorist Alex Jones will pay nearly $1 billion to the families of Sandy Hook victims.
A jury found Jones liable for creating a fake narrative that the 2012 mass shooting in Newtown, Connecticut was a hoax. The families claim Jones profited off the lies while they were harassed and abused. 20 children and 6 adults were killed in that mass shooting. Jones's lawyer has vowed to appeal the decision.
Jury deliberations will go into a second day to determine the fate of the convicted Parkland school shooter. Prosecutors and defense attorneys for Nicholas Cruz gave their closing arguments to the jury on Tuesday and spent all day behind closed doors. Cruz has already pleaded guilty to killing 17 people and injuring 17 others at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. The jury in this case will decide whether Cruz gets the death penalty or life in prison without parole. A small earthquake shakes central Maryland, how large it was and what areas experienced it.
Efforts to pause the fast-moving case of Adnan Syed's conviction from being wiped out hit a standstill. Why Hayman Lee's family isn't stopping, though, in their fight for justice.
A key measure of inflation coming in hotter than expected. I'm Atrell Nashar with a closer look at the numbers and the president's latest comments about the odds of a recession.
Well, 2 minutes before 11 o'clock, and we're on top of these big stories tonight. A legal blow tonight for the family of Hayman Lee. Why Maryland's second highest court is not standing in the way to free Adnan Syed.
No more snow days in Maryland. The school system switching to virtual snow days, and the pushback tonight.
And fears of a recession on the minds of Americans. That's not easing the key inflation measure that's ticking up and what this means for the risk of a recession. Amy Simpson, Rebecca Pryor, and Atra El Nashar have the full details on these stories. Well, thank you for staying with us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. New developments tonight after charges were dropped against Adnan Syed. This afternoon, the Maryland Court of Special Appeals, our state's second highest court, denied the Lee family's motion to stop their appeal of Syed's release. The family is arguing they weren't given enough time by City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby when she decided to move to vacate Syed's convictions. The family now has 15 days to say why their appeal should move forward.
Tonight, the Lee family continues its fight for justice. They're now challenging the main reason Syed was set free.
I don't feel sitting here today like neither I nor my clients really understand what this new DNA evidence really means.
That new DNA test is what city prosecutors say cleared Syed. FOX45's Rebecca Pryor tells us where the case stands.
Yeah, City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby and the attorney for the Lee family, Steve Kelly, both appeared on CNN this morning making major claims about the case.
They feel excluded. You know, young Lee, Hayes' brother, said in court that he felt blindsided and betrayed.
Hayman Lee family attorney Steve Kelly on CNN's New Day this morning saying the City State's Attorney's Office completely excluded them from the process that led the charges against Adnan Syed being dropped.
They feel that they were excluded from this process, and they feel that, you know, there are a lot of questions out there that need to be asked that are not being asked.
And the family is also questioning the validity of the DNA testing that set Syed free.
I understand the lab that was used was a fringe lab. It wasn't the Maryland crime lab or an established, facility. What has been presented to the public is thus far is not evidence. It's characterizations of evidence. And the problem there is that no one is in this process there to ask the hard questions.
That statement echoing what Kelly told FOX45 News yesterday, just hours after the charges were dropped.
Are my clients confident that this demonstrates innocence? No, they're not, because they still have questions about innocence, and they still have questions about other evidence.
Meanwhile, Marilyn Mosby says touch DNA results were taken from Lee's shoes. Mosby says they found a mixture of 4 people. Syed was not one of them. She appeared on CNN this morning as well, pushing back against Kelly's allegations.
We've done 2 rounds of DNA and the latest DNA, skin cell testing. It shows and excludes Adnan Syed. I personally reached out to Mr. Kelly because I can't reach out to the victims themselves. They're represented by counsel. And he didn't want to hear about the substance as to why we dismissed this case. So it's funny to me that he gets up here and he says that they're blindsided.
Yesterday's decision came as the Lee family, along with Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosch, was trying to stay the case, claiming the judge had violated the family's rights by not allowing Lee's brother to testify before Syed was released from prison last month. That hearing came on the day Marilyn Mosby's own federal trial was set to begin, and the public first learned she was looking to vacate Syed's conviction the day before jury selection in her trial was set to begin. That federal trial is now delayed, but the timeline is leading some experts to question whether her moves in the Syed case are in the best interest of the families involved or her own political interests.
It makes you ask one big question, which is this why it took so long? Were you waiting to play this card? Were you always intending on doing this for Adnan Syed, but waiting until the opportune time politically, the opportune time with regard to your own federal prosecution?
Now, the Lee family attorney says the family is open to there being a different suspect in the case, and their problem isn't that Syed is free, but that they don't feel they were given enough information about the case, nor do they feel that they were included as they should have been. Reporting in studio, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Fox 45 News has extensive coverage on Adnan Syed and the murder of Heyman Lee. You can find our latest reporting right now at foxbaltimore.com.
Well, Fox 45 News is your headquarters when it comes to investigating the education your children receive. And tonight we have learned come this winter, more than half of public school systems statewide will be doing away with those traditional snow days. So in the case of bad weather, children will learn from home. Fox 45's Amy Simpson shares whether or not your school is on that list.
While some bemoan the loss of childhood joy brought on by a surprise day off from school, others say sprinkling in a few of these virtual snow days is a way to preserve some of those summer days come June. 24 public school districts across Maryland, and so far, more than half of them are planning for possible virtual snow days this winter. The Maryland State Department of Education says 11 districts have already been approved to move forward with plans for virtual inclement weather days. Worcester, Talbot, Caroline, Wycomico, Dorchester, Cecil, Kent, Carroll, Anne Arundel, Allegheny, and Prince George's counties.
All right, we are moving on to HCPSS inclement weather asynchronous instruction plan.
Right now, Howard County Public Schools is waiting for official approval from the state's Department of Ed.
Overall, 67% of respondents supported the proposed plan.
In Howard County, students were the biggest opponents of switching to virtual snow days.
60% of student respondents were not in support.
The students didn't like it, but they'll like it in June, I think. They might change their minds.
And just this week in Baltimore County,
a total of 26,923 responses were received regarding virtual inclement weather days.
The district sharing results from its community survey conducted last month.
Our community was clear when we asked if families wanted BCPS to implement traditional inclement weather days this year, in other words, closing school. The overwhelming majority said yes.
BCPS now moving forward to get state approval with its plan, only proposing virtual learning on snow days after the district sees 5 days off due to bad weather.
Traditional snow days are valued by students, staff, and families.
There are rules and regs about how and when Maryland districts can use a total of 8 virtual days this year. Not all plans are the same, and in some cases, it's up to the superintendent to make the call when the forecast comes in, meaning Maryland students may still see their district on that cancellation list if and when flakes fall this winter. And if your local district is not on this list just yet, well, it's not out of the cards. Today, Harford County Public Schools telling me it expects this topic to be discussed by the local board sometime soon. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
A key measure of inflation coming in hotter than expected.
It is a discouraging development in the fight against inflation. It may push the Federal Reserve to get more restrictive.
National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has a look at what this means for the risk of a recession.
America's producers getting hit harder than expected by high prices. Inflation of year-over-year wholesale prices only slightly slowed in September to 8.5%. Many economists predicted it would be 8.4%. Even before this news, Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester said there's been no progress on inflation.
I think the real issue is we need to do more.
The Federal Reserve set to continue reducing its balance sheet after pumping liquidity into the market during the pandemic and rolling out more aggressive interest rate hikes, coming with risk of overcorrecting and pushing the economy into recession. President Biden meeting with his top economists Wednesday morning after downplaying the potential for a major slowdown.
Should the American people prepare for a recession?
No. Look, they've been saying this now every 6 months they say this. Every 6 months they look down the next 6 months and see what's going to happen. It hadn't happened yet.
The president says a recession is possible, but he doesn't anticipate one.
I don't think there will be a recession. If it is, it'll be a very slight recession. That is, we'll move down slightly.
Now, the Fed's actions are clearly already impacting the housing market. As mortgage rates rise, riskier adjustable rate mortgages are becoming more popular, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association. Higher rates also killing demand for refinancing applications.
A growing number of Americans call their financial situation poor, 46% in a new AP NORC poll, up 9 points from March. More interest rate hikes are essentially guaranteed. Whether Americans will have to take those on, with prices soaring even further, will be clearer Friday with the release of September's Consumer Inflation Report. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
Well, did you feel it? A small earthquake rattled central Maryland overnight. How large it measured.
The number of elderly victims is rising at an alarming rate. I'm Kayla Gaskins with the story from one family straight ahead.
And around here, the big story, some potential rain and severe weather for tomorrow, and then a big chill coming for next week. We're going to break it all down coming up in the 7-day forecast on the other side of this break.
Well, did you feel it? An earthquake struck central Maryland last night. It was reported around 11:49 when a lot of people are sleeping. The epicenter was about 3 miles southeast of Sykesville and 6 miles west of Randallstown. The Department of Natural Resources says it measured 2.0 magnitude in strength. No one reported any damage, though, which is a good thing. And Jonathan, I was asking, were you here in 2011? Because here on TV Hill and really across Maryland, we had a 5.8 magnitude earthquake. We were sitting at our desks in the middle of the day, and it's you don't think it's going to be an earthquake, but we do get quite a few here.
Yeah, usually they're pretty small. I was actually not here in 2011. I got here in 2012 from New Orleans, so I got here just in time for Sandy when she came by. But nonetheless, when we get earthquakes around here, they're usually not 5s or 6s or, damaging stuff. They're like this, 1 to 3 on average every year. And in fact, this is kind of a hot spot for some of them right along that Howard County, kind of Carroll County line area, because we do have an ancient fault line that kind of sits in this area. 11:49 last night, it was 2.0 on the Richter scale. So really, how does that stack up? Well, usually you have to get from, say, 5.5 and above all the way up to, 8 or greater. That's like the big California type earthquakes to really start getting damage. 2 is only really, it's detectable by a seismogram like you saw there on that graph, but it's really kind of hard to feel. Some folks, about, say, 200 folks felt it and reported that, said it sounded kind of like an explosion or kind of like a shock wave, that type of thing. But anyway, done with that. Now we're looking to our next weather maker. On the HD radar, notice the rain moving in from the west, and in fact, even some stronger storms around Memphis. Had some big rain delays, of course, with the NLDS game down in Atlanta out of some of this stuff. And that's the next system that's coming toward us with the potential of severe weather tomorrow. Marginal level 1 risk of severe weather around here. It's a 1 of 5. 5 to 8 p.m. on Thursday. Downpours a potential, wind gusts, so some damaging winds. That's also a chance. And maybe even an isolated tornado, especially south on the Chesapeake Bay over the lower Delmarva and down into eastern Virginia, if we can get enough instability in the atmosphere. Nonetheless, again, there's our next weather maker, the cold front moving in to the warmer and becoming more humid air. And by tomorrow, we're kind of in that bullseye of the severe weather potential. So 64 degrees right now, winds out of the south-southeast at 7 as we take a beautiful look over the stadium district, and that humidity is beginning to finally come up to 73%. Look at these temperatures, 10 to 15 degrees warmer than the same time last night. No surprise, cold front is coming on the way behind it. The blues, that's where temperatures are really falling off. Look at those 40s and 50s, Minneapolis to Chicago. Highs only in the 50s potentially as we get into next week. Now, the future scan says some on and off rain through tomorrow morning's commute and into noontime as well. Could even have a couple of heavier showers in there. And there are your storms from 5 to about 8 p.m. from west to east. So the p.m. commute could be dicey. And then it looks like things clear out and cool down a little bit to wrap up the week. And in terms of rain, up to an inch, maybe an inch or 2 inches of rain in some of the heavy spots. So I would say a resounding no on outdoor recess tomorrow. On and off rain, maybe some thunderstorms around. So that's probably going to keep kids inside watching a movie. So rain and thunderstorm or two tomorrow afternoon. Any of those that come through could be on the strong side. 67 Friday, 72 Saturday. Ravens parties around here on Sunday. Slim chance of a shower, 73. And a bigger cool down coming by the middle of next week. Maybe even a sprinkle. And some computer models say, especially north and west higher elevations, there could be some graupel mixed in or even a wet snowflake as we head into Tuesday.
Jonathan, thank you. Make sure to keep the free WBFF weather app close tomorrow. If any severe storms come up, we'll alert you right away. Just search for WBFF in your app store. Well, older Americans are increasingly targeted by online scammers aiming to steal large amounts of money through various schemes. A new FBI report says the problem is getting worse. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has the troubling details.
According to the FBI, the number of elderly victims is rising at an alarming rate. Total losses up 74% from 2021 compared with 2020. Angie Kennard's late father, Donald Griffith, had an incredibly successful life.
He owned his own commercial construction business, all the concrete work in the Pentagon. Like, my dad was behind a lot of that work, so he's a super intelligent man.
During his later years, Griffith turned to online dating, striking up a digital romance with someone named Mary Blake. Blake frequently needed cash.
It started, a few $100s at a time, working its way all the way up to $20,000, $40,000 at a time.
There was little Angie could do to protect her dad. His doctor said he was mentally fit at the time. After his death, she learned the full extent of the losses, $750,000.
It was crazy to imagine that he would even do something like this, and give all his money away to someone he had never met. They just really manipulated his mind.
Last year, more than 92,000 victims over the age of 60 lost a staggering $1.7 billion to elder fraud scams, a giant increase from the year before. Angie Kennard sent evidence of her dad's scam to the FBI's online crime unit. Investigators told her this helped them catch the Nigerian crime ring responsible for targeting her father and others. If you or a family member is a victim of elder fraud, you can file a complaint through the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting.
Well, ahead on the late edition, more questions from Heyman Lee's lawyers, why they don't trust the state's explanation for dropping charges against Adnan Syed. And we're not out of the woods regarding Omicron, why the latest variant has health experts concerned. And the trend continues. 2 more Ravens back from injury, practicing for the first time this season, plus previewing Sunday's showdown against a familiar face. That's ahead on Sports Unlimited.
The chips are continuing to fall into place for the Baltimore Ravens on the injury front. For the most part, the bad news, Marcus Williams will miss a significant amount of time with a dislocated wrist. The good news, David Ojabo and Tyus Bowser practiced for the first time this season. Both players coming off torn Achilles. The rookie Ojabo suffered his during Michigan's Pro Day. Bowser suffered his during the 2021 regular season finale. While the road to recovery continues for both, having both these guys back on the field is a great sign.
Very impressed. And a game, we'll see. I mean, we'll take one step at a time. It won't be this week. But he said October. I remember he told me October, and I might have mentioned that to you guys. Tyus is another guy who's worked extremely hard. I think he's taken it very seriously. I mean, man, he's been involved with every aspect of his rehab. And I just think he's done a great job. He's really strong, and he looks good.
Well, Sunday, the Ravens will face former defensive coordinator Don Wink Martindale for the first time since his departure. Martindale now holds the same position with the New York Giants, and Lamar Jackson knows better than anyone that Wink loves the blitz. But just how much will Jackson see it on Sunday?
Ain't no telling. Coach Wink known for his exotic blitzes and, just doing this thing. Shout out to Coach Wink.
They do a great job. He's a great coach. I've known Don, and we've been friends since we were kids, basically, almost, kids in coaching. And, proud of him as what he did here, obviously, and he's doing a great job up there. I mean, they're playing great defense, so nothing but respect and love.
Coming up with Marcus Williams on IR, we catch up with the two guys who will have to step up. Kyle Hamilton and Geno Stone talk about their increased roles when Sports Unlimited returns.
Rocco, thank you. Ahead on the late edition, a 13-year-old shares his story after he was allegedly robbed outside a city school, how his family stepped in after his 8-year-old cousin got involved. Trending now, Mount Washington Pediatric Hospital unveils a sensory room to help sick children during their stay. The new facility is designed to help patients get active, relax, and play. Organizers say facilities like this one are critical for children who are recovering from illnesses, and that this also helps build confidence and social skills for children with special needs.
The sensory room is a facility for children undergoing different therapies to help them engage in, if they haven't moved in a while, helping them to engage in some tactile sensory issues, just for movement and certainly light conditions.
Well, after the dedication, the hospital partnered with Spirit Halloween to throw a party for the kids at the hospital. Since 2007, the organization has donated over $568,000 to Mount Washington Pediatric Hospital. Well, a big effort to support small businesses in downtown Baltimore. National law firm Baker Donaldson has donated the entire floor of 100 Light Street to small businesses. 30 businesses are going to benefit from this. This was made possible through partnerships with Johns Hopkins, Bloomberg, and Goldman Sachs. The businesses will get training from Goldman Sachs as well as ongoing support through these partnerships.
We wouldn't defund the police.
I'm excited to work in partnership with the new state's attorney.
The two men vying to become Maryland's next governor square off in their only scheduled debate. Tonight's topics and how they hope to win your vote. Baltimore's crime often caught on camera, but suspects prove hard to find. Why some city residents are reluctant to get involved. And a family's outrage after a 13-year-old is attacked outside a Baltimore City school. Why they say the boys' school should have done more to prevent it and respond to it.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News Late Edition.
Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson. As Baltimore's violent crime continues, Fox 45 looks into how New Maryland leadership will address the violence. We begin with the 26-year-old man shot and killed in southeast Baltimore this morning. 262 people have been killed in Baltimore this year. Well, tonight we're investigating brazen crimes and the struggle to arrest suspects even when the violence is caught on camera. Fox 45's Keith Daniels explains.
Well, police have said many times how communities step up to help catch those bad guys with guns, but there are times, they say, when that call for help seems to go unanswered, even when the suspects are caught on camera.
53401.
Across Baltimore City, images of gun violence caught on camera. The trigger pullers out to kill.
Our young suspects, our suspects in general, they don't care who's around.
Detectives at the Baltimore Police Department need your help.
Police releasing video this week, a suspect in the daytime shooting of a man at a corner store on East Baltimore Street at South Highland Avenue. Look here, the suspect seen clearly wearing a red shirt, then seen on video running into the business, opening fire on the victim who survived. The shooting happened last month, September 6th. The suspect still on the loose, like many others, caught on camera.
They remain on the loose because we're not turning in our friends, our sons, our nephews, our schoolmates, our students. We know who these are.
Their identities possibly known. Still, they remain free, including those responsible for the mass shooting that happened in Park Heights in August. All of it caught on camera in daylight. The suspects pulled to the corner of Park Heights and Shirley Avenues, jumped out of a silver Lexus, and opened fire on a group of men playing table games, killing one man and wounding 6 others. So far, no arrest.
They're just committing these violent crimes without regard, and the responsibility falls on all of us, the police department, the community. We're all one in this, and we all are suffering because of it.
So why do people who know something say nothing? The pervasive so-called stop snitching culture in Baltimore City, oftentimes the blame. As Shakir Muhammad reasons.
It's not that we don't care, but, you know, it's best that you just mind your business, man, because you can dig yourself a grave, man, and put yourself in a situation. I mean, that's something different, and you know, and
what do you mean different? Step up then?
Honestly, no, I wouldn't, especially if it has nothing to do with me or mine, and like even if it was dealing with me, like to be honest, yeah, I wouldn't get the police involved.
Still, the plea from police:
help us figure out who these people are before they strike again.
And they do strike again. We learned tonight that a suspect caught on camera shooting and killing a man last year in April got away. 4 months later, police say he was arrested for an unrelated attempted murder charge. And tonight, he's behind bars. Reporting tonight, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Fighting crime is a top priority for both men vying to become Maryland's next governor. In tonight's lone debate, Republican Dan Cox and Democrat Wes Moore shared their visions for a safer Maryland.
It's important that we get the guns off the streets that are there illegally and being used illegally for crimes. Mr. Moore and his team, they actually supported decriminalizing much of this and refused. The approach is their approach was to refuse the felony approach that if you've used a gun in crime, that you should go to jail. Instead, they want them to run the streets. That's why we have 60% of the murders in Baltimore City right now being unsolved and unprosecuted. That's going to change on my watch. We're going to bring back law and order.
People need to feel safe in their own communities, in their own homes, and in their own skin. And I think about what my opponent said that I said, which, by the way, I never said, once again. There's also an important role that the state plays in making sure that we have a strong parole and probation system. When you consider a third of all violent offenders are in violation of parole and probation, that is a state function, and right now it is understaffed and undermanned. We have to fix that. That we can actually put state resources to be able to make sure we're providing supports for violence intervention programs and violence interruption programs, which are continuing to show impacts because the people who are closest to the challenge are oftentimes the ones closest to the solutions.
Well, after that debate, our Mackenzie Frost pushed Cox and Moore on their crime policies. Cox says he supports stronger penalties for repeat violent offenders. Moore didn't commit to an answer. Cox has been vocal about his distrust in Maryland's voting process in the past, saying he's hesitant to accept early voting results. Moore says he has complete faith in the election system. The two also sparred on abortion, Moore pledging access while Cox said he'd defend unborn lives. Cox did not directly answer if he'd support a national ban. You can see Mackenzie Frost's full story on foxbaltimore.com. Baltimore County election officials say they will count ballots early this election cycle, reversing a previous policy saying they'd wait until 3 days after the election. Ballot counting will begin November 5th. In Baltimore City, mail-in ballot counting starts October 21st, and Arundel, Harford, and Carroll counties will wait until after Election Day. Here's a voting schedule. Early voting begins October 27th and ends November 3rd. Mail-in ballot request forms must be received by November 1st. Election Day is November 8th.
Well, Maryland's Court of Special Appeals is denying a motion to temporarily pause the process of clearing Adnan Syed's murder charges. This comes one day after City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby announced the charges against Syed had been dropped, citing a lack of DNA evidence